Lily has always felt like she was supporting me, even though I've never spent her money. After her beloved returned, she pushed me into another woman's room and said, "Help me close a business deal, I will reward you." But when I truly got involved with that woman, Lily broke down and said, "I didn't say anything. Who allowed you to change your heart?" Chapter 1. I accompanied Lily to the KTV until late at night. She playfully tapped my chin, and I instinctively moved away. I don't know why she always likes to tap my chin, as if teasing a puppy or a kitten. Even though I'm much taller than her petite frame. But she never does this to Bob. She blushes even at the slightest touch of Bob's hand, even though he has always been indifferent to her, unlike me, her boyfriend. Lily playfully taps my chin. "Len, how many years have we been together?" I gently remove her hand. "We've been dating for 3 years. Lily's best friend teases from the side, "Oh, is the little puppy angry? Lily, you should buy him something to make him feel better, right?" Lily laughs along. "What do you want?" I shake my head, not saying anything. I'm tired of explaining. Even though I haven't taken a single penny from Lily in these 3 years, my cards are neatly kept in her drawer. All the things she bought for me, I've kept them untouched. Except for one time, when Lily gave me a sketchbook filled with her childhood drawings. I kept that. I would lie on the bed and look at it when I had nothing else to do. But Lily still sees me as the little puppy she keeps by her side, rather than her boyfriend. She leans into my embrace, finding a comfortable position like a little cat. Her hand draws circles on my chest. "You know, Bob is back." I stiffen. Bob, Lily's beloved. She even called out his name when we made love. Since she made that mistake, I haven't stayed over at her place. Today is the first time in half a month that I've seen her. She nuzzles against me like a little cat. "Len, this time with Bob, it has to have a resolution." My hand freezes, still holding Lily. My throat feels dry, and the acid in my stomach rises, burning into my heart. I endure the pain for a while before finally coughing. "So, what do you mean?" Lily hands me a card and nuzzles against me. "Len, it seems like we might be reaching the end." I look at the card, but remain silent. For these 3 years, I've given my heart and soul to Lily. Even though everyone thinks I'm after her money, I haven't explained anything. I ran through the rain to embrace her, just because she was afraid of thunder. I took a plane in the snow to bring back a handful of snow for her, just because she said she wanted to see what it looked like. But later, I found out that it was snowing in the city where Bob was. What she wanted to see wasn't the handful of snow I brought back. I worried about her stomach problems, fretted over her drinking habit, and even thought about how to relieve her work stress. I took care of her, putting in all my effort, even going against my father's wishes, who thought I was too infatuated. But I still can't compare to Bob. Just one simple sentence, and I fall short. My stomach hurts. I swallowed some saliva, raised the whiskey in front of me, and drank it down. My stomach hurt even more, but the pain numbed me. I pushed Lily away. "All right." I smiled at Lily. "As you wish." Lily blinked, seemingly surprised by how readily I agreed. "Len, I'll help you find a job." I shook my head, rejecting her, stood up, and straightened my clothes. "No need. Lily, everything you've given me in these 3 years, whether it's the cards, the watch, or the limited edition sneakers, I've kept them in a safe. The password is your birthday." I turned around to leave. Lily grabbed onto my clothes. "Len, wait." Her delicate face looked up at me. "It seems like you're not at all upset about the breakup." I didn't say anything, I just turned and walked away. As I was about to leave the private room, Lily caught up to me, holding her phone. No one was singing now, and the room was quiet. I could even hear Bob's voice on the other end of the phone. "Let him go to the room, then I'll believe that you won't have any lingering ties." Lily hung up the phone, expressionless, her beautiful foxy eyes narrowed slightly, a sign that she was angry. She hung up the phone and pointed at my chest. "Len, let me ask you again, aren't you even a little bit upset about the breakup?" I smiled and lowered my head. "Isn't that what you wanted? I'm just following your words, so why is it suddenly wrong?" Lily narrowed her eyes again. After a while, she smiled. "Good, very good." She took out a card and threw it at me. "This is the key card to the room upstairs. There's a woman inside. I need you to keep her entertained, so that my negotiations tomorrow go smoothly. Do it well, and I'll give you a generous breakup fee. Otherwise, you'll have nothing." Her finger slid across my face, her lips curled up, but her eyes were ice cold. My stomach hurt again. And along with it, my heart ached. I grabbed her wrist. "Lily, what do you take me for?" Lily looked at me and smiled. "Just a big toy. Have fun with your friends when I'm done with you. What's wrong with that?" Chapter 2. I looked at Lily, for a long time. This is the woman I have loved for so long. Even her best friend felt uneasy and stood up to stop her. "Enough, enough. If we're going to break up, let's do it properly." But Lily stubbornly handed me the room key card. "Are you going or not?" I took a deep breath, feeling desolate inside. I looked down at the card for a long time, then smiled. "I'll go." I took the card, turned around, and walked away. Lily called out from behind me, "Len. You." I stopped in my tracks, waiting for her to say something. But she didn't say anything. Not a single word. I sighed with a bitter smile. For the last time, as she wished. To sever all attachments and never look back in this lifetime. I took the elevator upstairs and ran into the hotel manager. When he saw me, he hurriedly made way. "Len is here. Does Mr. Smith have something to instruct?" I shook my head. "It's personal." "Yes, the room card Lily gave me belongs to my family's hotel. Including Lily, she is an executive in our corporate group. I just haven't started working in the company yet, and ordinary people don't know about it. I was afraid that the difference in status would corrupt our love, so I didn't tell Lily. I even knew that the person staying in this room is a major client of our group, and it was me and my father who fought for Lily's qualifications to negotiate with her." I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The room was pitch black, with only a dim floor lamp next to the sofa. A graceful figure sat on the sofa, taking a nap. Her naturally curly long hair cascaded down her chest, and she wore a comfortable and well-fitted beige woolen dress. This should be the big client, June. When she heard the sound of the door opening, she opened her eyes. The corners of her eyes lifted, and she stared at me without blinking. After a while, she smiled. "Lily really has some nerve." She stood up and stretched her body. I just casually mentioned that she got herself a little lapdog, and she took it seriously. I lowered my gaze. "I was just taking a casual look too. If you casually mention that, I'll leave." Angry or not, I didn't want to degrade myself. June raised an eyebrow. "She didn't force you to come, did she? Otherwise, I wouldn't dare let you in." I remained silent. June frowned. "Really? Well, that won't do. I won't do this kind of thing. You should go back." I nodded and turned to leave. When I got home, I locked myself in for 3 whole days without going out. After 3 days, my father forcibly dragged me out of the house, saying that he wanted to take me out for a meal, expand my network, and make it easier for me to work in the future when I inherit the family business. When my father and I arrived at the private room, I immediately saw a familiar figure sitting by the table, June. Seeing me, she raised an eyebrow and pursed her lips, ultimately not saying anything. She just smiled meaningfully. I knew she was making fun of me. But I could only pretend not to know and show concern for her. No matter how bad I felt, I still had to manage business clients. June raised her glass to toast me. "President Len, cheers to you. There aren't many boys these days who are so innocent." She smiled, her eyes clearly expressing the word foolish. I also knew that most of the guys in this circle look for models and escorts, and they are the ones who get dumped, not the other way around. I was the only odd one out, going to be someone's toy boy, but not even succeeding at it. I chuckled and raised my glass, downing it in one gulp. "President June is right." I poured another glass and toasted June. Apologies for the laughter. The alcohol entered my troubled heart, too spicy, making tears well up in my eyes. My father, who always indulged me, patted my back. "Look at you, slow down with your drinks. Don't let President June make fun of you." I coughed and wiped the corner of my eye, smiling. "Indeed, I guess I do look like a joke." I nodded towards June. "Sorry for the laughter." June stared at my reddened eyes, looked at me for a while, didn't say anything, just nodded. For the rest of the evening, she didn't toast me again, but the way she looked at me became much gentler. Chapter 3. After finishing our meal, my father asked me to escort June back to her hotel. The two of us sat in silence in the car, with June looking out the window the whole time. When we were nearing the hotel, she turned around and looked at me, saying, "I'm sorry." I was a bit confused and asked, "Sorry for what?" You didn't do anything. June shook her head and replied, I was mocking you in my mind. But then I suddenly realized that I was mocking your pain. I shouldn't mock someone who is in pain. I'm sorry. I lowered my gaze and shook my head. No need to apologize, it's my own fault. As the car pulled up to the hotel entrance, I got out and opened the door for June, saying, I won't accompany you upstairs. But June glanced at me and said, Don't you want to have another drink? I brought whiskey with me. She smiled, squinting her beautiful eyes. I thought we could continue drinking. I hesitated for a moment and replied, It's quite late now. She was a valuable client, and I didn't want to outright refuse her. Moreover, she was a girl, and the one at risk would be her if we went upstairs. June laughed again. I'm not afraid of you, so why are you afraid of me? Though she was smiling, there was a hint of seriousness in her eyes. I've also been hurt before. We're just sympathizing with each other. Her glimpse of pain in her eyes touched me. If there was a mirror right now, my eyes would probably reflect the same sadness. I closed the car door and said, Then I'll gladly accept your invitation. For the past few days, whenever I closed my eyes, I would dream. Dreams filled with Lily's cold eyes, her throwing the room key at me, her being with Bob. I felt like I couldn't hold on any longer. I really needed a drink to help me forget. To forget the sincerity I had shown for these past 3 years and the outcome it brought. June and I walked into the lobby. The lobby manager came forward with great respect, about to say something, but a voice of shock interrupted him. Len? My body stiffened. It was Lily's voice. She looked surprised, more so angry, as she exclaimed, What are you doing here? I turned my head and saw Lily, accompanied by several guests, coming out of the hotel restaurant. She narrowed her eyes as she looked at me. She glanced at me and then at June by my side, forcing a smile. President June, it seems my recommendation suited your taste. June smiled and linked her arm with mine, nodding at Lily. I quite like it. I was startled by June's actions. Lily, too, turned pale, her voice trembling slightly. President June, can I borrow Len for 2 minutes? I suddenly remembered that I have something to ask him. June glanced at me, seeing that I didn't refuse, and shrugged. Just 2 minutes. We're in a hurry to go upstairs. Lily bit her lip and beckoned me with her hand. I didn't move. Lily gritted her teeth. Len, can you come here for a moment? Her beautiful face was filled with shock and anger, and her eyes were growing colder. I took a deep breath and walked towards her. I didn't know what she wanted to say to me at this point. It couldn't possibly be an apology, could it? Lily grabbed my hand and walked a few more steps, her fingers icy. Her face darkened, and through gritted teeth, she said, Len, are you disgusting or what? I froze. She could say anything to me, and I would accept it, but calling me disgusting, I couldn't accept that. What do you mean by disgusting? I asked, pursing my lips. It seemed like there was a cold fire burning in Lily's eyes. I thought you wouldn't actually go upstairs. You actually went up? She observed my face, my neck, as if she wanted to see my whole body. What did you do? Huh? As I looked at her angry appearance, I suddenly felt surprised and amused. I looked down at her trembling hands and asked her, But it was you who told me to go up, wasn't it? Lily, I was just following your words. I was angry at you. I was angry at you. The fire in Lily's eyes burned brighter, making her eye rims turn red. How could I have known that you would actually go and sleep with someone else? Len, do you have any shame? Lily is an executive, usually keeping her emotions in check. She is always indifferent towards me, often teasing me. But in this moment, her eyes were red, her mouth trembling with anger, like a child whose beloved toy had been taken away. It added a touch of authenticity. A touch of authenticity, reminiscent of her childhood. I closed my eyes and sighed. Lily, I should go. We're done. After saying that, I turned around and walked towards June, allowing her to link her arm with mine as we entered the elevator. I heard Lily's low voice from behind, filled with anger and panic. Len. I paused for a moment, but continued walking forward, taking long strides without looking back. Chapter 4. June and I drank a lot of alcohol. Neither of us spoke, just silently pouring and toasting, silently drinking it all up. I looked out the window, thinking about my past 3 years. She looked out the window, lost in her own thoughts. After a long while, a hint of mist appeared in her eyes, and she smiled at me. Why are there so many people in this world who don't appreciate what they have? Her smile was bitter. Stepping on someone else's sincerity, don't they feel any remorse? I shook my head and downed a glass of wine. June turned her head slightly to look at the lights outside, and the mist in her eyes turned into a tear, rolling down her face. We drank for 5 hours, from evening until dawn. In my drunken state, I carried the sleeping June to bed, covered her with a blanket, and stumbled downstairs. When I reached the lobby, I heard someone calling my name, Len. I turned around and saw Lily, huddled on the sofa in the lobby, wrapped in a shawl. Her hair was disheveled, and her eye makeup was smudged. Her eyes were red as she called out to me, "Len, I waited for you all night. Why did you just come down now?" She walked towards me. I thought about it carefully. You're not that kind of person. Nothing happened between you two, right? I rubbed my temples, unable to find the words. The hangover was splitting my head, and my heartache returned. Lily stared at me, seemingly unwilling to give up until she got an answer. Suddenly, I felt like laughing. It used to be me waiting sleeplessly night after night. Waiting for her to say she was working late, but the office building was pitch black. And in her best friend's circle, Bob would raise his glass with a half-smile, clinking it with Lily's. Once, twice, and again. Until I gave up, and she stayed up all night waiting for me. Why didn't she do it sooner? I laughed out loud. Lily, does any of this still matter to you? Do we need any explanation between us? Lily paused, seemingly searching for a reason. After a moment, she said, "You owe me money, so why can't I ask?" I pressed my temples, not sure how many times now, feeling disappointed. Disappointment, when it reaches a certain height, turns into despair. I was despairing over Lily. I covered my forehead, suppressing the headache. Lily, if you just cared about me a little, you would have noticed that I never spent a single penny of your money in these 3 years. I never touched your card. But Lily didn't believe me. Then what about your clothes, watches, and handbags? Those are my own money, I interrupted her, losing all patience. Lily, the people around you only fawn over you for money, so you think everyone is like that? But I'm not. I told her, word by word, I'm not like them. Lily bit her lip. Len, maybe we can talk again. I shook my head. What is there to talk about, Lily? I decided to open up the old wounds in my heart and make it clear to her. Is it about every time Bob calls, and you push me away to go see him? Or is it about every time Bob comes back, you constantly work overtime, and there isn't a single light on in the office building, even the security guards are asleep? Or is it about how at the mere mention of Bob, you wouldn't even give me the mercy of a breakup, but instead pushed me into another woman's room, treating me like a toy? Even though it's all in the past. Even though I've let go. I still tremble all over. Those memories have turned into steel needles, poking and piercing my heart, making it hard for me to breathe. I take a deep breath and ask Lily, "So, what do you want to talk about?" I give her a sarcastic smile. Or are you done with Bob and want me to come back? Lily falls silent. Suddenly, she starts crying. Len, she covers her face, I can't do it. I've waited for him for too long. I close my eyes. The pain in my chest tears through my organs. I hear my own voice, detached and elusive. Fine. Then don't bother with me, okay? Don't care about who I drink with, who I go into a room with, or whose bed I end up on. From now on, it has nothing to do with you. Lily sobs softly. I turn around and walk towards the door. The cold breeze of dawn pierces through, awakening me from my drunkenness and blowing away the last trace of reluctance. Chapter 5. After returning home, I drunkenly rummaged through the bedroom. After searching for a while, I found an art book. It was the only thing left behind by Lily, my only reminder of her. Lily was a talented artist when she was young. In that art book, there were vivid drawings of 2 children, a beautiful and lively little girl, and a silent little boy. Wherever they went, the little girl would always hold the hand of the little boy, refusing to let go. Even when they were bullied and pushed by older kids, they held hands and refused to separate. The pages of the art book had turned yellow, and many pencil lines were barely visible. But still, it felt like a treasure to me. When Lily was about to throw away the art book, I brought it home and would often flip through its pages. Only when I looked at the art book could I feel that Lily had once shown me warmth. She had once firmly held my hand, never willing to let go. Closing the art book, I went to sleep fully dressed. The dreams of the night were scattered and chaotic. Sometimes it was young Lily, holding my hand as we ran away together, and other times it was the present Lily, looking at me coldly and saying, "I'm tired of this, let's break up." I slept until 10 in the morning, and my dad called me several times. "Come to the office at noon, pick up June, and go out for some sightseeing." I realized that my dad really wanted me to meet June. In our family, arranged marriages were quite common in the end. Others accepted their fate, but I thought that Lily and I could be together till the end. I defied my dad, rejecting any arranged dates, which is why I still haven't been called to work at the company. Even now, I am unwilling to marry someone without love, unwilling to go through the motions after marriage just for the sake of having children, and then living separate lives once the child is born. I was initially going to refuse, but for some reason, I couldn't help but recall last night, when a tear fell from June's eyes as she stared out the window. That tear, slowly trickling down onto the carpet, fell silently. Even June's face remained expressionless. But when the night fell upon her slender phoenix-like eyes, I still caught a glimpse of melancholy. That hint of melancholy made it impossible for me to refuse. So, at noon, I drove to my family's company building. I waited in the lobby, scrolling through my phone, while waiting for June to come down. As I was scrolling through my phone, a pair of beige high heels appeared in my line of sight. I thought it was June arriving, so I smiled and looked up, saying, "I've been waiting for you for so long." But as I looked up, I saw Lily. She was dressed in a professional suit, with light makeup, but her dark circles couldn't be concealed, making her beautiful face look exhausted. She looked at me softly and said, "Len, did you come to find me? But what's the point of you coming to find me now? That day, I called out to you like that, but you didn't even turn back." I was taken aback and replied, "I'm not here to find you." Lily frowned, "Then what else could bring you here?" "I'm waiting for someone." I had just finished speaking when someone pulled at my sleeve. And then that person held onto my arm, smiling brightly, "Shall we go?" When I turned my head, it was June. Today, she was wearing denim clothes, with her hair tied into 2 braids, looking more lively than the previous times we met. She tilted her head and smiled at me, "Aren't you here to pick me up for some fun?" I looked at her smooth forehead and the smiling curve of her lips, and suddenly felt like I was basking in sunlight, warm and comforting. I nodded, "Let's go. I'll take you to the wetland park first, and then we can go hiking." As June and I walked away together, I didn't even notice that she was holding on to my arm. But Lily behind us shouted, "Len! You're back. Look at me once." I didn't stop my footsteps. Lily's voice trembled as she said, "You're back. Just turn around and look at me." I waved my hand behind me, started the sports car, and left with June. Many people from the company were watching my car. But Lily was the most shocked one. Chapter 6. Lily messaged me on WeChat, "Where did you get the sports car? Did June give it to you, Len? Are you with her because of money?" But after a while, she sent another message, "Len, you're not that kind of person, right? June's social circle is different from ours, she's just playing with you." I replied to her, "Aren't you just playing around too?" Lily didn't respond. June took my phone away from me and said, "When you go out to have fun, just enjoy yourself. Why do you have such a worried look on your face?" She looked outside the window and said, "There's nothing that sadness can't be solved with alcohol. If 1 round doesn't work, then 2 rounds. I remembered her teardrop again and couldn't help but be curious. "CEO June, it sounds like you also have some unresolved past?" June shifted her gaze back to me and smiled, "Call me June." She looked at the scenery of the wetland park in front of her and calmly said, "My ex-boyfriend, who didn't know about my family background, professed his love for me. But after I took over my family's business, I refused his unreasonable demands, so he had someone kidnap me, hoping to make a fortune. He got what he wanted and tore up the ticket." I was stunned. After a while, I apologized, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked." June shook her head, "It's okay, it's in the past." She tucked a strand of loose hair behind her ear, but during that time, I managed to get through by drinking. That's why I suggested you drink last time. I know how painful it can be to be betrayed sincerely. She said it lightly, but I suddenly remembered that June was only 26 years old, forced to take on the responsibilities after her father had a stroke. At that time, being kidnapped by a loved one, how desperate must she have felt? I hesitated for a moment, then raised my hand and gently patted her shoulder. "It's all in the past." I took June around to various places, and in the middle of our outing, I took a break to check my phone. That's when I saw a post from Lily's best friend on Moments. Lily is engaged to the love of her life. The picture showed Lily standing in the lobby of her company, reaching out to accept a rose from Bob, with a ring on her finger. Lily's friend commented on the post, "Some people successfully miss their last chance to salvage things." As I looked at the photo of Lily and Bob embracing, I couldn't express what I felt inside. It felt like a double-edged sword, no matter which way I turned my head, and now that sword had finally fallen. But strangely, I felt a sense of relief. I put down my phone and continued to enjoy hiking, eating, and watching movies with June. After dropping June off and it was already 10 p.m., I received a call on my way home. It was Lily, clearly intoxicated. "Len, didn't you see my Moments? Why aren't you reacting?" I chuckled. "What kind of reaction do you want? Do you want me to congratulate you and be your best man?" Lily hesitated, her voice hoarse. "Len, you're not happy, right?" She continued, "As long as you're not happy, with just one word from you, I'll..." She didn't finish her sentence. I lowered my gaze and mocked, "With just one word? It can't be rejecting Bob, can it?" Lily paused for a moment, then another moment. I laughed. "Lily, if you want my blessings, you have them. I wish you and Bob a lifetime of happiness. Don't torment yourself, you can't let him go." Lily didn't say anything. After a while, when I was about to hang up the phone, she finally spoke. "I thought I couldn't let go either, but now I don't know. Len, I don't know how to choose. When I see you with June, it feels like a fire burning in my heart." Without another word, I hung up the phone. Disappointment can be salvaged, but despair cannot. Chapter 7. My father saw that I no longer obsessed over a mysterious female coworker and moved out of the house. He was relieved and urged me to start working at the company as soon as possible. "Let's start with working together with June." During that time, Lily sent me a WeChat message. "Len, I regret it. I ignored her and blocked her. I wanted her to completely leave my world." Lily's best friend cursed me on Moments, blaming me for driving Lily crazy. Later, Bob called me. "Len, you played hard to get very well. Unfortunately, you're just a plaything. Lily won't care about you." After hanging up the phone, I looked at the custom-made suit my father had prepared for me and fell into deep thought. I wondered if Bob knew that his future boss, who would be arriving tomorrow, was named Len. The next day, there was a department meeting, and the cooperating departments also attended. Bob and Lily, as managers, were waiting in the meeting room, with eager smiles on their faces, waiting for the son of the chairman to enter. They were in a solemn state, waiting for me as I pushed open the door and walked in. Lily stood up first. "Len, why are you here?" Before she could finish her sentence, the assistant behind her respectfully introduced me. "This is Mr. Smith's son, let's call him President Len. We need to cooperate well with President Len in the future and perform well." Lily froze. I watched as her face turned pale. "Len, you are..." It's not her fault for not knowing. I never came to the company, nor did I mention my background. Being so obedient and easy to fool, who could have imagined that I was my father's only son? I sat down and raised my hand, gesturing for her to sit down too. "Manager Lily, please don't be polite, have a seat and let's talk." Lily stood there stiffly, as if she couldn't move. It was Bob who pulled her to sit down, and his expression became even more unpleasant, turning as red as a liver. I lowered my head and looked at the documents, one by one, as they reported. When it was Lily's turn, she stuttered, and I interrupted her. "If Manager Lily can't explain clearly, find someone who can." I was dealing with the business my father had worked hard to build, not a place for love affairs. Bob managed to handle it decently, except for his trembling hands that couldn't open the documents. The meeting lasted for an hour. After it ended, as soon as I walked out of the meeting room, Lily seemed to have just realized it and chased after me. "Len. You." Unfortunately, this time she still couldn't finish a complete sentence. Because June was waiting outside my office, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, everything went smoothly. She smiled, and the sunlight shone on her and the sunflowers, warm and comforting. I smiled and took the flowers. "Thank you, come in and have a seat." Lily also wanted to follow in, but I closed the door, blocking her outside. June sat across from me, helping me arrange the sunflowers. "President Len, our collaboration will temporarily end next month." She smiled and said, "I might not come here as frequently anymore." Suddenly, I felt a bit disappointed. I didn't know why, but after thinking about it, I attributed this disappointment to her not being there to accompany me during the most difficult times. I watched her play with the flowers for a while and, almost unconsciously, opened my mouth. Can I still find you? Visit the city where you are? June looked up at me, her eyes shimmering. After a few seconds, she smiled and lowered her head, saying, "You're welcome anytime." I swallowed nervously and suddenly felt a rush of anxiety. It felt like there was something else I wanted to say. But the office door was abruptly pushed open, interrupting me. I looked displeased as Lily rushed in, her eyes red, no longer composed. "Are you really the only son of the Smith family?" I nodded. June added with a smile, "Yes, Lily, you treated the son of President Smith like a little dog, for 3 whole years." Lily's face turned even paler. "Why didn't you tell me?" I gazed at her delicately made-up face and suddenly realized that I couldn't find any traces of her childhood in it. I closed my eyes, thoroughly disappointed, not wanting to hide anymore. "Lily, I'm not just the son of the Smith family. I had another name when I was a child, it was Matt Jones." Crash! Lily sat down on the floor, knocking over a teacup in the process. Her hand was cut, bleeding profusely, but she seemed unaware, just staring at me blankly as if she didn't recognize me anymore. After a while, she suddenly seemed to remember something terrifying. "What have I done?" She seemed to be asking me, but also asking herself, "What have I done?" Chapter 8. When I was a child, my father was a second-generation rich, with the surname Jones, just like my grandfather. But my grandfather got addicted to gambling, lost the family fortune, and abandoned my grandmother and our family. Since then, there was no trace of him. Our family fell into a shanty town, struggling to earn money and repay debts. I went from being the richest kid in school to the poorest in an instant, naturally attracting bullies. At that time, there was a girl in school named Lily, who was also a target of bullying because her father was disabled and her mother had a mental illness, with no one to support her. The first time I was bullied, Lily appeared out of nowhere and pulled me away, running as fast as she could. She was familiar with the terrain, agile in her movements, and no one could catch up. That was the first time I met her. In the following days, we stuck together for warmth. Enduring beatings together, fighting back together, sharing the meager lunches that were often snatched away, going hungry together, and relying on credit at the small grocery store together. Later, my father took me to another city for better opportunities, and I had to transfer schools. Lily and I didn't want to be separated, so we even ran away from home once, but my father reported it to the police and found me. When we had to part ways, Lily and I made a promise that I would come back for her in the future. During the time we were apart, there wasn't a single day that I didn't think about the girl who had gone through hardships with me. Fortunately, my family started making money again, and I was able to come back and pursue my career. Unfortunately, my grandmother passed away due to excessive labor. My father told me that my grandfather had abandoned his wife and child, and my grandmother had dedicated her whole life to us, so my father and I should change our surname to honor her. That's how I went from being Matt Jones to Len Smith. When my family returned, Lily happened to be working at my company. She was excellent and hardworking, but she didn't recognize me. As I got closer to her, I noticed that she avoided talking about her childhood, and anyone from her past had been cut off by her. I hid my past and made efforts to pursue her, eventually standing by her side. I thought I had fulfilled my promise, but little did I know that I was just there as a spare tire, accompanying her for a while. Now, as I look at Lily sitting on the floor, my heart that once loved her has become completely calm. But the young Matt from my childhood is crying in my heart with grievances. We promised to be together when we grew up. We held hands, closer than anyone else. But in the end, it turned out like this. I brought iodine and Band-Aids, crouched down, and wiped Lily's wound with iodine, then applied the Band-Aid. I smiled at her and said, I once believed that we would truly fulfill our promise and be together. Tears streamed down Lily's face, her lips trembling, unable to speak, only hearing sobs, fragmented and painful. But unknowingly, we reached this point. I helped her up, standing up myself. Lily, we can't go any further. This is where it ends. Tears filled Lily's face. Her beautiful eyes were filled with pain and pleading. After a while, she trembled and said, I would never have treated you like this if I had known it was you. It's no use. I opened the office door. Lily, the best opportunity has passed, and now we've reached a dead end. Chapter 9. That day, Lily stood outside my office door for a long time, crying until she broke down. In the end, it alarmed my father. When my father came down, I was handing Lily a sketchbook. "This is the only thing you gave me that I kept. Now, thinking about it, there's no need to keep it. We both need to look forward." Trembling, Lily opened the sketchbook and looked at the childish strokes inside, depicting two children. One enduring beatings, the other crying with heartache. One running away, the other leading the pursuers away. One holding the other, silently gazing at the sky. On the day they parted, the two of them held hands and vowed to be together in the future. The strokes at that time were all sincere. The later days seemed like a joke. Lily turned to the last page, and tears fell onto the sketchbook. She put away the sketchbook and turned around, running away while crying. Her stumbling figure, trembling shoulders, overlapped with the little girl who was chased and beaten in childhood. My father stood beside me and asked, "Should we keep her?" I hesitated for a moment. Keep her if she performs well, let her go if she doesn't. But deep down, I believed in Lily. The little girl who struggled out of the shanty town, who changed my temperament, who cut off the past, she absolutely deserved this position. She just couldn't fulfill the promise from our childhood. But it's okay, it's all in the past. I turned to look at June. "I'll be going on a business trip to your place this month. Is that welcome?" June quietly looked at me. After a while, she handed me a sunflower. "Welcome." Chapter 10. Bob resigned. Actually, he had no choice. He couldn't face me day and night, listening to my orders. But he received a lot of help from Lily in his career, and it's said that he had a hard time finding a job after resigning, feeling stuck and wanting to come back. But I won't go back on my word, and I won't let anyone treat me as a fallback option. Both in career and in love, it's the same. That day, after Lily took a leave of absence, she took a month off. A person who hadn't taken a vacation in years. After a month, she stood downstairs waiting for me at the company. She had lost weight, her hair had grown long without trimming, and her elegant suit had been replaced with casual clothes, the same couple outfit we bought together in the past. When she saw me, tears flowed before she could even speak. "Len, this month, I visited all the temples I could go to, hoping for time to turn back." She bitterly smiled. "I know this is absurd, but I can't control it. What if there really are gods or Buddhas who can hear? If time could turn back, I would never treat you like this." I glanced at my watch. "Lily, I have to go pick someone up for dinner. Let's make it short, shall we? Also, I've been busy with work lately, so unless it's due to health or family matters, I suggest not taking leave." Lily froze. After a while, she forced a smile. "I don't have a chance anymore, right?" I didn't say anything because I saw June. June walked towards me with a bright smile. I came early to avoid traffic. I reached out my hand towards her. "Let's go, finish eating and then watch a movie." We walked hand in hand, completely forgetting that Lily was still there. A low sobbing sound came from behind us. "Len, I came here to resign. I can't face you anymore." June stopped in her tracks and looked at me. Should I try to convince her? I shook my head. No need. I turned around and smiled at Lily, sincerely like we did when we were kids. "Lily, I agree. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors." Turning back around, I held June's hand tightly, and she gently held mine. This time, neither of us will let go.
Lily Extra. Chapter 1. I don't like it when people bring up my childhood. Those were the most shameful and unbearable years of my life. Later on, I studied and worked tirelessly, all in an effort to shake off the shadow of my childhood. The shadow of being laughed at and bullied. But the one thing I can never shake off is the smiling face of a child. His smile was genuine. His name was Matt. His family used to be wealthy, but they fell from grace and he became one of the bullied ones. I used to mind my own business. But when Matt's family had money, he was the only one who didn't look down on me, and he even gave me milk to drink. The milk was imported, and he handed it to me without any hesitation. I think he doesn't remember it. But I remember it all too well. So when his family fell on hard times, I couldn't help but approach him, help him, and trouble myself for his sake. I endured many beatings for him, and one time I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't tell Matt because I didn't want him to feel bad. He was the only person who shone like the sun in my difficult life, and I didn't want to make him suffer. Even if it meant enduring beatings, I didn't mind. Chapter 2. Matt and I gradually became inseparable, going everywhere together. In his innocent voice, he solemnly swore to me, "When I grow up, I will work hard and marry you." As children, we believed that marrying someone was the guarantee of never being separated. I was a bit more mature than him, and I knew it wasn't realistic. Kids like us, who grew up poor, couldn't afford to like each other, or else we would drag each other down to hell. But against all odds, I still nodded and said, "Okay, I'll wait for you." Even to this day, when I look back, I still don't know why I nodded. Later, Matt had to transfer to another city for school. He hugged me tightly and cried. I usually followed the principle of less trouble is better, but that day, I seemed to be out of my mind. "Why don't you run away from home? We can survive by scavenging." Matt nodded vigorously, and we held hands as we ran to the outskirts of the city, on foot. We were so naive, thinking that as long as we worked hard, we could survive. But within a day, the police found Matt. No one came looking for me because my parents never reported me missing. When the police had to separate us and take us back, Matt cried uncontrollably, clinging onto me, unwilling to let go. "Lily, wait for me. I will definitely come back for you." By that time, I already knew that adults' words didn't hold much weight, let alone children's promises. But for some reason, when Matt said that, I believed him. I didn't cry, but I nodded earnestly, "I'll wait for you." Chapter 3. Afterward, 10 years passed. My father was disabled but had a gambling addiction. Whenever he lost, he would sell things from our home, hoping that I could change our fate. "If you sleep with the loan shark for one night, we can turn our lives around." He even brought the loan shark home to inspect the goods. But that day, my mother had an episode and attacked him with a kitchen knife. When my mother regained her senses, she showed me love. She held me and said, "You go, and never come back." I escaped with my identification documents, and my mother set fire to that dilapidated house. Since then, I had no home. Chapter 4. I worked hard and managed to get a job at Smith & Company. My colleagues knew better than to mess with me. If they got in my way, I would do whatever it took to overcome the obstacles. I had no choice. It was an ingrained instinct from my childhood experiences, etched into my very being. When my former classmates heard that I had become successful, they came crawling to me, trying to flatter me. But they didn't realize how fiercely I rebelled against everything from the past. Whenever someone mentioned that they knew the old me, I immediately blocked them without hesitation. It was my shame, my painful wound that festered and couldn't be touched by anyone. The innocent little girl named Lily from before had disappeared. In her place stood the present-day Lily, devoid of morals, seeking only happiness. I indulged in drinking and partying, living without restraints. I pursued Bob, who came from an intellectual family with a high education, just like pursuing a dream from my childhood that I couldn't reach. In my childhood dreams, I was a university professor. Even though I knew Bob was stringing me along, I was like a tired donkey being tempted by a carrot, unwilling to give up. There were others who pursued me, including wealthy individuals. But I couldn't stand rich people. Every extravagant detail of their lives struck at the core of my self-esteem, which had been shattered in my dusty past. They didn't know what it meant to be in need of money, while I didn't know what money truly was. Deep-rooted insecurities are hard to change. And so, I was strung along by Bob, squandering my youth, twisted in my self-doubt, living aimlessly. Until one day, at a nightclub, a handsome young man approached me. He was so good-looking that one could call him beautiful. He didn't seem adept at picking up girls at nightclubs, clumsily drinking glass after glass, thinking it would please me. I found him foolish, not liking these naive types. But that night, I decided to stay with him. It wasn't because his drinking impressed me. I simply saw a familiar shadow in him. A shadow that was abandoned alongside my unbearable past, locked away in the depths of my mind, in a forbidden zone that I didn't allow anyone to touch. I assumed he was a promoter at the nightclub. As I brought him home, he overheard me drunkenly talking to my best friend on the phone, cursing the wealthy second-generation rich with the most vicious words. Then I cursed my former classmates, telling them not to have the audacity to come near me. I saw him sitting in the passenger seat, frozen. Thinking that I had scared him, I laughed and patted his head, saying, "Don't worry, I'm not like that in bed." He forced a smile, his mouth twitching, lost in deep thought. Chapter 5. He said his name was Len, and he had no money and no job. Our boss's last name was also Smith, so I joked with him, saying, "Check the family tree, maybe we're distant relatives who can have a little fun together." Len laughed uncomfortably. Len was good-looking and had a great physique. Soon, I wanted to live with him. Len was pure and kind-hearted. I gave him cards, bought him things, and indulged him with all kinds of luxury, but he never became materialistic. I even felt like he had the talent to become a monk, with his pure and simple desires. But he was so devoted to me, even though everyone said I was just playing with him, he still wanted to seriously continue this relationship. Love lasts for 3 years. People are not like plants or trees, they cannot be without emotion. Every night when I had nightmares from the past and screamed in fear, I would hide in his arms. Every moment when I drank until I felt miserable and cried for my mother, Len would rush to my side and say, "I will love you like your mother." Every time I became jealous to the point of distortion, jealous of the wealthy, Len would silently listen to my most unbearable thoughts and silently pat my back. 3 years passed, and I told everyone that I was just playing around. But I knew it wasn't true. I was invested too. I even started thinking that if things didn't work out, I could have Len pursue a career in administration and marry me. But just as I decided to settle down in the 3rd year, Bob came back. When I had a welcome party for him, I didn't invite Len, but Bob still saw a photo of him from my best friend and said with a fake smile, "He's quite good-looking." I smiled and said nothing. Within 2 days, Bob applied to transfer back to headquarters and asked me to help him more with his work. I agreed. Bob was happy and jokingly said, "Kick that poor boy out, it's about time to settle down." When I heard the words "poor boy," I furrowed my brows. I didn't like it when people used the word poor to describe someone. And I especially didn't like it when someone described Len like that. But in front of me was Bob. If I married him, I could integrate into an intellectual family, and my child in the future could become a university professor for me. The bitterness and inferiority of my childhood had long twisted into a gaping mouth, sharp and ferocious, devouring all my emotions and conscience. I wanted to completely break free from the marks that the past had left on me and become an entirely new person. A lily who had erased her past. Chapter 6. Those few days, I didn't dare to look at Len. I didn't even dare to say much. But Len thought I was under too much pressure, and even wanted to buy a cat to help me relieve stress. He cooked soup for me, invited me to go hiking, and was extremely careful and caring. After much contemplation, I realized that I could only speak to Len when I was drunk. I invited my best friend and Len to go sing karaoke, and we drank without restraint. The whiskey burned my nose, making me cough until tears streamed down my face. When I got drunk and fell down, I lay in Len's arms and laughed, saying, "We've come to an end." I think all those years of cruel self-training had paid off. I had become a creature with only goals and no emotions. I actually said it like that, and then I watched as Len's eyes went from shining brightly under the lights of the private room to dimming. I thought he would beg me to reconsider. For a moment, I even hoped that he would beg me. I felt that as long as he opened his mouth, I would genuinely consider it. But he just stood up quietly, nodded, and turned to leave. As if those 3 years of time, the companionship and cuddling were equally insignificant to him. I suddenly became angry. Originally, Bob suspected that I had developed real feelings for Len and asked me to introduce him to our new important client, so he could be assured. We had heard that this client had just gone through a breakup and had been feeling down for a while, making it a vulnerable time. This suggestion was for our own good, and given my ruthless nature, I would have agreed without hesitation. But that day, I unexpectedly wished that Len would beg me not to break up. Then maybe I would reconsider Bob, and certainly not push Len towards someone else. But Len didn't show any attachment at all. That pierced my heart. I smiled and handed the room key to Len, saying, "Go accompany the client, I'll give you the breakup fee." At that moment, Len had already reached the doorway, and the corridor lights illuminated his face. I saw a flicker of pain in his eyes. But strangely, it made me happy. At least he was in pain, for me. Chapter 7. I thought I was mentally prepared. But I didn't expect that seeing Len and June together would hurt me so much. It felt like an invisible hand tightly gripping my heart, nails digging into the flesh, stirring it up. Stirring until everything turned blurry. This pain exceeded my endurance, even though I was known for my ability to endure and hide. Ignoring the thoughts of the important client, I confronted Len, even though I no longer had the right to question him. And for the first time, the usually gentle Len looked at me coldly and told me that I had no right to interfere in his life. He sneered and laughed, saying, "Are you trying to let go of Bob?" I thought I would immediately shake my head without hesitation. Who wouldn't choose Bob? But in that moment, I hesitated. Reason kept telling me that Bob was the perfect choice to completely leave the past behind. But there was a voice in my heart lamenting, "Can you let go of Len? Are you willing to? How can you bear to?" I grew up in the harshest environment. I had long grown accustomed to making rational choices. In that moment, I cried and said that I couldn't let go of Bob. That voice in my heart let out a long sigh, as if foreseeing the future pain and loneliness. Chapter 8. After Len left, I started having nightmares every day. In every nightmare, there was a group of people chasing me relentlessly, chasing, and chasing. There was a figure that stayed by my side, accompanying me in the escape. But I couldn't see his face clearly. Every night, I would wake up crying and instinctively reach out, searching for Len's presence beside me. But I couldn't find him. More than once, I sat motionless until dawn, telling myself over and over again that I would eventually forget. Just like childhood, things we want to forget will eventually fade away. But despairingly, this time it was different. Len was different. I couldn't forget. I saw Len picking up June from the company, and panic, jealousy, and pain flooded over me. I even wanted to rush over and hold on to Len, in front of June, begging him to reconcile. Watching him drive away in his sports car, my panic grew even stronger. I was afraid that if he was doing well with June, he would never come back. I called Len and told him that June was just playing with him, asking him not to take it seriously. But in truth, I had no good intentions. I just couldn't accept seeing Len look at other women with those eyes. But Len casually replied, "Aren't you just playing with me too?" I was stunned. I had no words to say. Yes, how could I, who treated him the worst, teach Len how to judge people? Wasn't I the one who hurt him the most? That day, Bob proposed to me, and in a daze, I accepted. I knew I had no way out, I only had Bob now. But deep down, I still mourned. Mourned for what I had lost, leaving a void in my heart. Empty. Chapter 9. I have imagined countless identities for Len. A nightclub salesman, a gigolo, a minor actor, even a waiter. But I never expected that Len would be the heir of the Smith family. When he appeared in the conference room out of nowhere, I was shocked. I was shocked because I had been struggling for so many years, and my intuition told me that my career was in crisis. But after the initial shock, another kind of panic set in, a fear that I couldn't explain or understand. It felt like the greatest pain in life was about to come crashing down on me. I was so scared, so terrified that I disregarded my dignity and rushed to Len's office, even begging him to take another look at me. If he just looked at me again, would he remember that he once loved me? But he didn't look at me. He was looking at June. With the same gaze he used to look at me. I never imagined that when Len looked at other women with tenderness, my heart would ache so intensely. It hurt so much that I had to clutch my chest, almost unable to stand. But it's okay, I told myself. I have climbed up so far in all these years, there's nothing I can't endure. But in the next moment, Len told me he was Matt. I couldn't hold on anymore. The moment that name, Matt, appeared, I heard a loud noise in my mind. Boom. It was the sound of the high walls I had deliberately built, burying away those painful, embarrassing, and cruel memories. All of those memories came rushing back at once. And in the depths of the ruins, stood a little boy, silently looking at me, saying, "We promised to be together, didn't you forget?" Chapter 10. I fell down and injured my hand. Fresh blood flowed out, staining my hands. But I didn't care at all. I stared at Len intently, finally remembering where I had seen him before. The sorrow in my heart turned into a scream. I warned you, I clearly warned you. Tears unknowingly streamed down my face. I was in so much pain that I couldn't stand up. He was the pillar of my childhood, the anticipation of my teenage years, the only beautiful memory in my ugly past, the only pure existence. I treated him like a toy, playing with him and then tossing him aside. Suddenly, I remembered that after breaking up with Len, I found all the cards in the drawer, saw all the gifts in the wardrobe. But the one thing missing was my sketchbook. The sketchbook that I threw away, and Len retrieved it like a treasure, carefully preserving it. Inside that sketchbook were the tender details of our childhood. And now, Len returned that cherished sketchbook to me, ending the last connection between him and me. I covered my face, crying in pain. Len applied iodine to my wound and put a band-aid on me. He sighed, "Lily, we've really reached the end." I seemed to hear him lamenting too. "In all those days I waited, even if just once, if you had turned back, we wouldn't be here now." Suddenly, I had no strength to respond. I fought for over a decade, never easily giving up on anything. As long as I could still speak, I could defend myself. But now, I had no strength left. I can apologize to anyone, but I can't apologize to Matt. That's what breaks me completely. It's enough to drain all my strength. Chapter 11. Later on, I took a month off. I searched through temples, hoping for a chance to turn back time. It seemed to become my solace to keep going. Unfortunately, after a month, time continued to move forward. My despair grew day by day, as did my longing for Len. I couldn't resist going to see him. He looked dashing in his suit, with a smile on his face, appearing so happy. I suddenly realized that it was a happiness I had never seen before. A happiness I had never given him. I knew I should let him go and let him be happy like this. But I couldn't accept it. I really, really miss my Matt. My Len. The only person in the world, besides my mother, who has been good to me. Even twice as good. I begged Len to give me another chance. But he interrupted me, smiling and looking ahead. I turned my head, and there stood June. She was wearing a beige dress, standing under the sun, gentle and radiant. Her smile pierced through me. It was a smile that I, living in shadows, could never possess. The long-lost self-doubt resurfaced once again. I retreated to the corner, watching Len and June walk hand in hand, savoring the agonizing pain of jealousy consuming me. At this point, I understood that I had lost all chances. It's time for me to exit the stage. Chapter 12. I quit my job. I used to be someone who was always striving for success. But overnight, I lost my drive and motivation. Bob and I divorced. Bob once asked me, "Is it because I can't find a job right now that you look down on me?" I shook my head, "No. It was because I looked down on myself." I returned to my alma mater and opened a small shop nearby. The shop faced the playground, where Matt and I used to sit and gaze at the stars. Back then, young Matt pointed to the sky and said, "Lily, my Aries is here, and your Scorpio is over there." I didn't know if he was pointing in the right direction, but I went along with it and said, "Not far apart, that means Aries and Scorpio are good friends and will never be separated." Matt scratched his head and smiled, "Just like us. Never apart." I kept watch over the small shop, looking at the stars in the playground. Even now, I still can't distinguish which constellation is Aries and which is Scorpio. But it doesn't matter, as long as they are the stars Matt and I have seen together. As long as I still hold on to those memories. In the end, I grew old in loneliness. There were always news about Len online. He got married to June and had a son and a daughter. His family business grew bigger and he matured, no longer the young and inexperienced boy seeking love. Once, a gossiping reporter asked him, "Have you only loved your wife your whole life?" I saw him pause for a second, then he smiled and nodded, "Yes." I covered my face and wept. That year, I turned 50. That year, I finally distinguished Aries from Scorpio. But it didn't matter anymore. For the rest of my life, I would never see my Matt, my Len, my boy again.